Carol, it's off to you.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Carol Moss. I'm your first vice chair, and we are going to now hear from some of the candidates because we are in election season. It will not be that much longer before we will have the primary, and I hope that some of you are starting to receive your new voter ID cards in the mail. If you have, put a show of hands. Oh, a few, not as many as I'd hoped. All right, but they are in the mail and you will be getting them. So please double check when you get them to make sure that the information is correct. What is changing will be your LD number and your congressional district number. That is because of redistricting, and that's why you're getting the card. Your voter ID number should stay the same. And unless you have moved and didn't update that, then maybe you will have either an old or your new address. But please watch for that. And I do know that the independents are starting to receive by postcard, if they are on the vote by mail, ballot by mail, they are starting to receive which primary they want to vote in. Since the primaries are a party situation, we're voting for either Republicans or Democrats, okay? So if you are an independent, you should be getting a postcard soon, if not today, probably in the next week, in which if you are voting by mail, you have to identify whether you want to vote in the Democratic or the Republican primary, okay? If you go to the poll, then you will be asked that question. So please watch your mail. It is not junk mail. It is not, a farce. It is not, a conspiracy. This is what happens, and this is what you need to know about voting in Arizona. And make sure your friends and your family know that too, because again, it's important that, as we've seen in the last 48 hours, 24 hours, it's important who gets elected and who is going to be passing your laws and passing rules that will rule your life. So please make sure that you watch that. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to Paula or myself. We'll be happy to get you information that you need. So, since we are having an election, we have lots of candidates running for office. Just a couple of housekeeping notes. We're going to keep everybody on mute, okay, until after each presenter has spoken. You can put your question for the speaker in the chat. If you would do that, we'd greatly appreciate it because sometimes people have similar questions, so we will try and combine them to expedite the questions and the answers. Our timekeeper is Monroe Copeland. Monroe, wave. There you go. Thank you. He is going to keep our speakers on task because unfortunately, as we all know, politicians love to talk. So we're going to try and keep this meeting going and on time. So with that, we're going to start off with our first speaker tonight, and he is a gentleman who has had public service in his life for a long time. Representative Reginald Boulding is currently the minority leader in the House. He is serving his third term in the House from LD27. I'm not sure what new number that has become, but he is a candidate for the primary, for the Arizona Secretary of State. The Secretary of State runs our elections across the state. And another fact you should keep in mind is that should the governor not be able to perform their duties, and this has happened at least 3, maybe 4 times in our history in Arizona, they can then become governor of the state. So it's an important position. And so anyway, he is an educator. Reginald Boulding is an educator and was a special education teacher in South Phoenix before running for office. So we are very thankful that he has time to speak with us today. And so Representative Boulding, please watch Monroe's window. He will give you a heads up on how your time is going. And it's now up to you. You have the floor.
All right. And Carol, how many minutes should I expect?
You have 10 minutes. And if you end a little early, we can take more questions.
And a little early. You said we're politicians speaking. What? I don't know what early means, except for unless it's a ballot, right? So no, first I want to just say thank you all for being here. And before I start, I just want to give a big shout out to Representative Germain and Representative Pawlik. Really have the pleasure of fighting on the floor with both of those champions every single day at the state legislature. As was mentioned, I currently serve as the House Democratic leader. This is my fourth term down there, so a total of 8 years fighting on the front lines for voting rights, fighting for issues that matter most to our communities. But before I tell you about what I do, I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. I was born and raised in a small town in Ohio, raised to a single mother who never had more than a high school education. But her single most important dream in life was that her three young boys would pursue a high school, college, and career that would really take them and move them mountains. And my mom was successful. She didn't know what steps we needed to take as kids outside of, she trusted the system to really make sure that as kids that we got the education that we deserve. And I was blessed. I had outstanding teachers. Was given an opportunity to go to an outstanding university. I always had a dream growing up. And my dream was I wanted to be an attorney. So I would stay up at night and I would watch TV shows like Law and Order and The Practice, and I would pretend to grill the witness on the stand every single night. And I would win every single case. I didn't know the steps I needed to take in order to become a lawyer, though. As I mentioned, I grew up in poverty. I didn't see a lot of lawyers in the community that I lived in. But my mother really relied on us to really believe in dreaming and put those dreams into existence. Went down to the University of Cincinnati and there did very well and earned a full ride law school scholarship to one of the top schools in the country. It was at that point that I really had and it was an inflection point in my life. I really started to learn about this term called educational inequity. And the reality is that many zip codes across this country, students aren't given the same opportunities as others. And I simply believed in a single mission. No matter what zip code, no matter what community you live in, every single student deserves access to an excellent public education. So it was at that time I decided to turn down a full ride law school scholarship. And my mom said, what are you thinking? And become a special education teacher and moved out to Phoenix 15 years ago. And I can tell you, I enjoyed every single moment working with my kids in the classroom. And I currently, I'm raising 3 young girls. Myself and my wife, we have 3 young girls. And I think about the experience that my mom had with her 3 young boys and thinking about a state and a country that would allow them to dream and pursue their dreams. And when I pause and think about, in one generation from growing up in poverty to now serving as the House Democratic leader, I know that we have individuals in our state and in our nation who would not want that to be an American story. They want to tear down a story that would not allow our elections, allow us to have the freedom to live and to thrive, is something that would not be possible. And I don't subscribe to that. I truly believe that, we can come together across lines of difference. I believe that we don't all have to think alike in order for us to get things done. And I know that that's possible here in the state of Arizona. And, for me, when I first got down to the state legislature, one of the things that I wanted to do was figure out a way that we can work on solving solutions and solving problems. And the next Secretary of State has to be laser focused on solving problems and solutions and actually building trust. Because right now our elections are more partisan than they've ever been. Politics is more partisan than it's ever been. And if we're ever going to change that narrative, it has to start with someone. It has to start at some time. It has to start at some election. And this is the election that is going to happen. I believe voters want something to fight for. They don't want something to fight against. So our campaign, we're going to talk about a vision for Arizona. We're going to talk about how do we bring people together and how do we actually achieve the dreams and hopes that we all had when we moved here and we think about our kids and grandkids and what we want them to do. So for me, there's several different things that I'll be doing as Secretary of State. One, a civic study came out and it showed that only 15% of our 18-year-olds are registered to vote, 15%. And there is no reason why that every single high school in this state should not have voter registration forms on day one for every single 17-and-a-half-year-old who wants to get registered to vote. So when elected to Secretary of State, I'll use my background in education. I'll partner with our Superintendent of Public Instruction, fingers crossed is still Kathy Hoffman. And what we'll do is we'll ensure that our students, they're getting registered to vote, because what we know right now is that when we look at our elections in important districts like this, young folks aren't turning out to vote. And if they did, that would change the game up and down Arizona in every single legislative district. We're also going to focus on advocacy. So in addition to serving in the state legislature, I founded one of the largest civic engagement organizations in the state called Arizona Coalition for Change. We've registered over 50,000 people throughout the state of Arizona to vote. That's extremely important. I have, as a community organizer working throughout the state to get people registered to vote is something that I've been doing, and in my current role as the founder of this organization. But also, we need to make sure that we're doing more than just registering people to vote. I can tell you from serving in the state legislature, people don't know the difference between their US senator and their state senator. So it's a little hard to get people fired up about elections if they don't understand the system. We have to make sure that we're actually educating people on what are the roles of these offices, what power do they have, and how we can actually hold elected leaders accountable. I can't tell you how many times I've got phone calls about trash pickup as a state legislator. I'm like, that's not me, right? Or potholes in the street. That's not what I do. But it's extremely important that I understand it, and it's extremely important that our citizens, our voters, know it. Right now we're all looking at what is probably going to be the opinion on Roe. A lot of folks don't know that our state legislature can have the ability to ensure that we're fighting to protect women's right to choose, and that's something that needs to be happening. That's something that we need to educate our community on. So I'm going to use my background as a community organizer to make sure that the Secretary of State's office is focused on not only voter registration, but voter education. Also, many folks don't know that the Secretary of State's office, they don't run elections, they actually certify elections and oversees elections. But one of the other functions that our Secretary of State office does is it oversees campaign finance and lobbyist reform. Many times I'm having conversations with people and they're wondering, are elected officials fighting for the community that representing them, or are they fighting for lobbyists that actually have funded their campaigns?
2 minutes, sir.
Now, I appreciate it. Thank you, Monroe. Right now, what we're going to do is we're going to create one of the most robust campaign finance and lobbying reporting functions that this state has ever seen. So if you want to know whether or not an elected official is being influenced by a corporation that they're voting on, it should be very simple and easy for you to find that out. And lastly, when it comes to the role of the Secretary of State's office, it's going to be about bringing together our county recorders, because you have to have someone who not only understands the system, but that can bring people together. So what we're going to do is we're going to propose ideas, and we're going to do what the Secretary of State's office should do, like what other office does. At the beginning of the year, we have a state of the state address where the governor lays out his priorities for the state. There's no reason why we shouldn't have a state of democracy address every year where we're proactive about how we're going to actually bring people together. I'm proposing that we should make a ballot tracking as easy as FedEx. You should know when your ballot's been mailed. You should know when your ballot arrived. You should know when you sent your ballot and when it's been received. All of those functions, if we can do it with FedEx, why can't we do it with our election systems? If we want to talk about free, fair, and secure elections, that's a way to do it. And lastly, many people in here have all applied for a job before. And when you're applying for a job, you look at references. And I can tell you a little bit about our references. We've been endorsed by the mayors of Flagstaff, Tucson, Tempe, over 50 lawmakers, folks from our tribal communities, tribal nations, our largest community groups, because they trust and believe that in order to change the dynamics of Arizona, to change the dynamics of the Secretary of State's office, you have to have someone who understands, fundamentally understands our elections, but also understands the functions of this state. We talked a little bit about water, talked about other issues. Those are the issues I'm on the front line with as the House Democratic leader, and I look forward to some of your questions tonight. Thank you so much, Monroe. I appreciate the countdown too.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bowling, very much. I do have a question in the chat. I'll read it to you. It comes from Daniel, and he says, as Secretary of State, would you hold contests such as Secretary of State for a day or hire paid interns to your office?
So one of the things that you all will see and hear is that you'll ask elected officials questions and they'll tell you the answers that you think that they want you to hear. But what I say is you should best judge elected officials by the history of the work that they've done. So as I mentioned, I lead an organization called the Arizona Coalition for Change. We've hired over 200 people throughout the state of Arizona. I have over 50 on staff right now. A lot of them are young folks who want to get involved and civically engaged. We'll continue to do that work, but we'll do it at a larger level at the Secretary of State's office. I'm an educator, and I know that we have to prepare our next generation, and what better way to do it but then actually letting our students, even young adults or our more seasoned adults, getting that opportunity. That's important and that's essential.
Okay, and the last question I have for you is, as you know, the Secretary of State is, in this case, presumptive lieutenant governor, which we don't really have, but would move into the governor's seat, like I mentioned, should the governor not be able to perform their duties. So the questioner wants to ask you, if you were governor right now, what would you do to improve the way of life for Arizonans?
So that's a very important question, and I think that's extremely key in our Democratic primary right now, and is when it comes to who's most positioned to step in to our governor's office right now. And I can tell you that by far there is no one running on the Republican or Democratic side that has more legislative experience and experience throughout the state than I do. Negotiating some deals on water, opioid epidemic, our tribal nations, gaming, those are all deals that I'm literally on the front lines with every single day. So I understand the aspect of our state. Right now, and if I was governor right now, there's a number of different things that I would do. The first thing is we have to make sure that we are looking to secure our future with public education. That's number one, because if we talk about Arizona having a strong economy, you can't do that without having a vibrant workforce. That's number one. Number two, Arizona is in a drought. We've been in a drought for several years. The reality is we have to have a robust water policy that's going to allow us to move into the future. As Arizona continues to grow, we have to be more responsible. There's something called active management districts that control how much people can pump water. We need to be talking about that conversation as a state, not just in certain areas. Number three, our social safety net. The reality is we have too many people in this state that's living paycheck to paycheck. So it's hard to talk to people about savings. It's hard to talk to people about building wealth and buying homes when people are struggling to survive. So we have to make sure that we're funding things like our, DD funding. We have to make sure that we're creating a system that are allowing people that if they, they have things like rental assistance. We have one of the hottest housing markets in the state, but we also have one of the highest homelessness markets. We have people who are losing their homes left and right. So we have to solve those problems and those issues. And Arizona is positioned to do that. We can do that. And I can tell you this, as the next Secretary of State, I am going to ensure that I can do whatever I can from my office to work with the legislature and our next governor. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a Democrat, to make sure that we have the ability to move forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Bolden. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, answering our questions and letting us know more about you. And again, people will have the opportunity to make a decision on the August primary as to who's going to be our Democratic candidate for Secretary of State.
Thank you so much. I put my information in the chat, and we're holding an event this Thursday, Education Leaders for Bolden. If you could come, RSVP, see you there. Thank you so much, Carol.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to move along now to another office that we will see on the ballot, and we often talk about down ballot races. And what we mean on down ballot races is the fact that, of course, the most prestigious and the highest known ballot or offices are usually at the top of the ballot, but nothing less is going down the bottom of the ballot too. And so these are very important positions. And one of those positions is going to be for the Maricopa Community College Board. As a member at large. Many people, I think, realize just how important our community colleges are, and Maricopa County is one that is held up to as a model for many people across the country as a wonderful community college, and that is only because, again, we have great people on the board who run it. Tonight, it's my privilege to introduce to you the candidate who is running for that at-large position, Kelli Butler, who is a native Arizonan and is also a member of the Arizona House. She represents the LD28, that's the old number, and she has served that district since 2016 in a district that was not blue, but they turned it eventually solid blue. And so through her work, not only as a representative and a candidate, but also because she was part of the Maricopa County Democratic Party, which is where I got to know Kelli as a fellow chair when I was a chair and she was, and then as she took over the chair of the Maricopa County Democratic Party and left that to run for office. So it's my great honor, my great privilege to introduce a friend of mine, but also a great candidate, Kelli Butler. Kelli, it's yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Carol, for the invitation to be here. Thanks to all of you. It's so nice to see all of you today, especially after some of the difficult, really troubling news we've had over the last, 24 hours. So it's nice to be here. Thank you. Nice to see my colleagues, Representative Pawlik and Germain's here, and to follow Minority Leader Bolding, who is doing a wonderful job leading our caucus. So I'm excited to be here and as a down ballot race now, and this is new for me. As Carol said, I got involved in politics totally on accident. I'm a native Arizonan. I was raising my kids, and I saw the cuts to education firsthand. So, way back when, my kids are adults now, but we started cutting funding, and I just thought this is the dumbest thing to be doing for our future and for our economy and our kids. So I started asking, why is this happening? And I figured out it was the legislature. So I innocently enough got involved, like so many of you, just went to a district meeting and wanted to do my part to help change things, got super involved, became the district chair, and then started running for office. I actually was the chair of the Maricopa County Democratic Party for a while, as Carol mentioned, but just trying to do everything I could to work to make sure that kids in Arizona basically get the opportunities that they need to be able to thrive. And it has always been, for me, my political involvement has always been sort of driven by kids, but as I have gotten more involved, I have seen how families are so impacted by the policies that we're putting in place, especially at the state level. So I've been in the legislature now for 6 years. And because of redistricting, rejiggered all of our districts, I got stuck into a district with 5 sitting legislators. And I actually my son just had my first grandchild, and I decided to take a step back to a down ballot race and take something a little less intense than the legislature for now. So I've decided, I'm thrilled to be running for the Maricopa County Community College District Governing Board, which is a huge mouthful. And it is, over my years in the legislature, I've had the opportunity to go and visit many of our community college campuses and see the vibrant programs that they are providing to students, whether it's, training programs, degree programs. We have worked at the legislature to allow them now to offer bachelor's degrees in addition to associate's degrees in certain areas. They're just these vibrant places in our community that are serving so many, not only students just seeking degrees and associate degrees and beyond that, but see high school students who are enrolled, trying to get, dual enrollment to get ready for their university career, and adults. I don't know about you, but like my dad takes classes at a community college in the evenings, and he's 80 in his 80s, and he just loves being part of that community. And so I think they serve our communities at all different levels, and really, it's such an opportunity to do some good for our county and beyond. And we know that Arizona, you all know that K-12 education in Arizona is still not doing well. We've got Representative Pawlik here, chair of our ranking member on our education committee. We work together a lot trying to improve things, but we all know, it's well known that K-12 is terrible. We're in Arizona. We're also really not doing well with post-secondary educational achievement. Arizona has set a goal to have 60% of our high school graduates need to achieve post-secondary degrees or certifications in order to keep our economy running the way it needs to be and to be participating in our economy to keep it strong. We need 60%. We're currently in the mid 40s, about 46%. We have a long way to go, and we need systems like our community college system to get there and to meet those needs of students where they are, so that we can help and, you know, improve our economy and those students' lives. We often say, obviously, you know, I'm sure many of you know, we're 50th in the country in education in K-12. Same thing in post-secondary educational attainment. Obviously, we know that those things are linked, but this is an exciting opportunity to really position our Maricopa County Community Colleges to meet the needs of so many different students. I'm excited about using my experience at the legislature and using contacts within the business community to continue to partner. We're seeing really neat partnerships, very productive partnerships develop with large employers like Intel. For example, they've started to partner with community colleges and for training programs. We need to continue to leverage those opportunities, that as we have manufacturing companies coming here and they need certain training for their employees, and we need to help them get involved with our community college system so that we can help train our next generation of our workforce, make those, you know, highly skilled jobs so people can earn a great living. And that can all be done at the community college level. So I'm so excited about this race and the opportunity to work together with a board, working positively, not so much fighting bad ideas, but working for good ones with the functioning and wonderful folks that are already serving on the Maricopa County Community College District Board. Which is too much of a mouthful. My race is interesting. I know that you're all familiar with, for example, these county races can be interesting. Julie Gunnigal said she was running for county attorney and got all her signatures in one night. It was bananas. Unfortunately, my race, I have to get paper signatures the old-fashioned way, and I need 1,000 by mid-July, July 11th. So I could sure use your help. I'm going to put a link in the chat. For anyone, you can sign up on my website. It's a link to my website where you can just sign up to, we'll mail you out a petition or two. It's a nonpartisan race, so a hugely different step from what we're doing in the legislature, especially right now. Nonpartisan, so you can get anyone to sign who's a registered voter in Maricopa County, can be any party. So you can go, you know, to your Republican friend down the street and get them to sign a petition. So I'm excited to be doing this. I ask you for your help to be able to qualify for the ballot. I am running for the at-large seat. There's only 2 of them that are at-large throughout the county. So it's a little bit of a harder race. There's more voters, obviously, to reach at a county level than there are for the other, you know, smaller district seats. But I'm up for the challenge. There is a person, a man who describes himself as a constitutional conservative who is running for the seat also. And, you know, constitutional conservative used to mean a lot of things. I'm not sure what it means today. In this race, last election cycle, there was a person running whose signs she was holding an automatic weapon or semi-automatic weapon. I'm not sure what that said about her platform for our students and, you know, faculty at our community colleges. But so it can be an interesting race. And I've been warned a little bit that, you know, we've seen some school board races get interesting, and this is at its core a school board race. I'm hoping that will not happen. This is nonpartisan. It is supporting students, supporting faculty, getting, you know, our workforce ready for the next, ready to support our economy. So hopefully it won't be a contentious race, but of course, if it is, I worked on those too. So hopefully it won't be, but I would sure appreciate your help gathering signatures. Again, mine aren't due until July, so I've got a little bit of time. And I just want people to know, and I want to use this opportunity to really describe how great the work that's being done at our community college level. And I think this is going to be a neat opportunity for me. It's a 4-year term, so it won't be as like this 2-year term at the legislature. It'll be a little bit less of a burden with the election cycle. So that's good too. Anyway, with that, I'd love to take questions. I don't know if anyone has questions, but I'll put my link to petitions in the chat.
Okay. Yes, Kelly, since we are running a little bit low on time, I'm going to ask one question. and have you answer it. There are a few more in the chat, so if we have time, maybe you can answer those in the chat. And also just wanted to let people know that we will be meeting live in person at the Sun Lakes Democratic Club. And we will have Kelli's petitions there. So if you want to show up next Monday on the 9th of May at 7 p.m. or a little bit before, you can sign her petitions at that meeting, and you can leave if you want to, or you can stick around to hear even more. But we will have petitions at places where you can sign. So the question is for you, Kelli, is, you know, is there any way that we can start to move toward making Maricopa community colleges tuition free as a reality? Because I know obviously they have increased their course, you know, cost per hour. So would you like to address that issue?
Oh, sure. Thank you. I mean, it's a wonderful goal. We should be looking at ways to make tuition as free as possible, which was, you know, always supposed to be the goal in our Constitution. Difficult to do that right now. It's important to know that the state legislature in the recession cut what the equivalent now of $100 million of funding from Maricopa community colleges and Pima community colleges, $100 million. And the legislature has chosen not to restore that, even in times of prosperity like we're, you know, find ourselves in today. So, you know, without the support of the state legislature, just like they don't support our universities, they don't support our K-12 system, preschool, without some greater support of the state, it's hard to get there to imagine free tuition. I would love that, and it would be an outstanding goal. And if we could get a different state legislature to rework the budget to support our students, I'm sure that would be high on the list.
Thank you so much, Kelli. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it starts at the legislature. Funding for the community colleges are at the legislative level as well as the university level. So until we change that body, we will not be having much hope to change the other two. So thank you so much.
They do a wonderful job of scholarships, though. So don't be dissuaded from applying, because they have a lot of scholarships. With that, I'll
okay. Well, if you can hang around and answer a couple of questions in the chat, I'm sure the people that asked the question would be appreciative of that. Thank you so much. See you later. All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to our own backyard, that is LD13. Okay, we have, again, in each race, every 2 years, we have the opportunity to elect a House representative. In fact, we could elect 2 House representatives, but Jennifer will address why we're not doing 2. And then we also are, as a district, entitled to 1 senator, and we will be talking about that after Jennifer concludes. But we do have, for the first time, you know, in 10 years of fighting, we got Jennifer elected in 2018, and she has been our House representative down at the legislature and has done a magnificent job of fighting every day and keeping up the good fight, because it's not an easy one, as you know, if you've been following the legislature. So she is on the ballot again. She is the only Democrat that will be running for a House seat. She will explain why we're doing that. And so tonight she's going to update us, because they're not done at the legislature, in case you haven't noticed. We are not done. They are running past their 100-day allotment. And so she'll bring us up to date on what's going on with that, as well as the update on her campaign. So Jennifer, Representative Pawlik, all yours.
Thank you very much, Carol. It's nice to see everybody tonight. I wanted to start with talking about abortion in Arizona. As you heard, the document was leaked last night, and it's extremely alarming, because in Arizona, we have a couple of laws that you may or may not know about. A couple of weeks ago, the Arizona legislature passed another abortion restriction law, and it would restrict abortion to 15 weeks with no exceptions for rape, no exceptions for incest. And then the abortion providers could be subject to a Class 6 felony. So that is really concerning in itself, but even more so than that, there's a law that goes back to Arizona territorial times that is still on the books. It's never been repealed. And if Roe versus Wade goes away, that law could come back into play. And that would have mandatory prison time for abortion providers between 2 and 5 years. It used to also punish women for having miscarriages, but that little bit was taken out a couple of years ago. So it is absolutely critical that everybody's voting and that you're voting for the people who are going to protect the rights of Arizonans. So I want to make sure that that's absolutely clear for all of you. If you haven't been involved before, it's time to get involved now. If you've been taking a little rest because you were tired from working so long, so many years to get where we are, that's okay, but it's time to get back to work. So speaking of work, our work schedule has been really annoying the last month because typically we work Monday through Thursday. And the past 5 weeks now, we've only been working 2 days a week. Part of that is that we're trying to come to terms on a budget, and that hasn't been so easy. A skinny budget was proposed, and what that means is it's only enough money to keep the state agencies running for another year, no bells and whistles. And what was absolutely stunning is that that skinny budget failed in the Appropriations Committee. So we had 2 Republicans join with the Democrats to vote no on, I think there were 13 bills. One of the Republicans, it was like she was handed a Democratic script because she listed out all of the things that we need to fund this year. And then the other Republican who voted no, he said, this is ridiculous. $13 million is not very skinny. And he said he would not support a budget for more than $9 billion. And all of the extra money that we have should be returned to taxpayers. So there is a lot of talk about a bipartisan budget right now. And some of the things that we've talked about recently at the legislature, Leader Boulding had a meeting with those of us who are ranking members. And he said, we're going to start with the budget that the governor proposed in January. We're going to go through that budget and we're going to make a list of items that are absolutely off limits for Democrats. We don't like those ideas and we're going to put those in a box. Then we're going to go through and we're going to say, okay, yes, we can live with these things, or maybe those are good ideas. Like, for example, kinship care. If there's a child who is being cared for by a grandparent, an aunt, or an uncle, right now, the family only gets $75 a month. There is a portion of the governor's budget that would increase that to $300 a month. So there are good things in the governor's budget. So we would make a list of those items, and then we would go back in and we would add other things that Democrats need to see in the budget in order to vote for it. So this time around, we actually have the opportunity for those conversations because there are probably 11 Republicans who will not vote for a decent budget. And as you heard earlier, we have $5.3 billion in excess revenue this time around. So some of the things within education that are being tossed around as important to include are full day kindergarten, district additional assistance, indexing that to inflation like we do for charter schools, increases to the base pay for students, and then special education funding. So know that we are continuing to talk, we're continuing to have those conversations. This week, we're only working 2 days. We worked Monday and I'll go back on Thursday. Next week is the same, we'll work Monday and Thursday. So I anticipate we'll see a budget probably the 3rd week in May. If that's the case, I'll make sure that you know. And if you want to come down to the Capitol and watch in the gallery as we stay overnight, you're welcome to do that because it is a 3-day process that we go through. And oftentimes we're working well into the evening, sometimes into the morning the next day. So you're welcome to join me at that lovely occasion if you'd like to. Then moving into the campaign. I wanted to start by sharing some good news, some endorsements that I recently received. I wanted to share with you that I've been endorsed by Arizona List, Progressive Turnout Project, Every District, Sierra Club, and Swing Left. So I'm really excited because some of those groups will be bringing feet to the ground to help us out. And some of those groups are fundraising groups, which will really help out a lot too. So when we talk about the race in District 13, you might hear that it is the most competitive race in the state. And I want you to be clear, most competitive does not mean that's going to be an easy race. Yeah. When we look at our numbers, we are 28.7% Democrat, we're 35.8% Republican, and we're 34.7% independent or party not declared. We currently, as of yesterday, with the latest voter registration numbers, we have 10,247 more Republicans than Democrats. And in the last month, the Republicans have registered 50 more people and we have lost 10. So the numbers are not going our way. In comparison, in December, before we had the new district, the split between Democrats and Republicans was 9,500. So it's getting more difficult. Does that mean that we can't win? Well, absolutely not. It doesn't mean that at all, but it means I need your help. If we think back to the 2018 cycle, which was the last normal cycle we had, I, by myself, knocked 14,000 doors. And the team, those of you who helped me out, we knocked 45,000 doors. We need to do that again. As of today, we are at 12,000 doors. And I say, Yahoo, that's great. I don't know if there are any other campaigns that have hit that many doors. I've knocked about 1,600 of those doors. But I need your help if we are going to reach the numbers that we reached in 2018. If you're nervous or you've never done it before, it's okay. We'll partner you up with somebody who's experienced. But we've got to get to those doors. We've got to let people know that their vote counts. So some of the things you can do to help, I'm putting links in the chat right now. There is a link to volunteer. One of the things you can do to volunteer is so easy. It's writing out little postcards that we leave at the door when people don't answer. So if you've noticed, my eyes haven't always been on the screen because I'm writing the postcards right now as the meeting's going on. That's one thing that you can do. You can drive people who knock the doors so they can cool off in between the doors. But what I really need your help with is knocking the doors and having those conversations with people. That's the most important thing. Thank you, Monroe. The next thing is fundraising. We have got to fundraise a lot. And I need you to hear me. I can't do the clean elections because it's not enough funding in such a competitive area. In the last cycle, I raised $275,000. I know that's a lot of money. And I'm not saying, please give me $1,000 because I know that's out of reach for a lot of people. But if you can donate $10 a month, awesome. I do have in the chat, sponsor a street sign. Those big street signs you see out on the corner, they cost $30 a piece. And I need 100 of those signs. So if you're able to support one sign, that would be super. We also have Operation Back to School coming up, and that's where we stuff the backpacks for Chandler's kids. You can sign up using that little link in there. And last of all, I will be at Black Rock Coffee on Alma School and Ocotillo tomorrow from 2 to 4. If you want to bring school supplies to me, if you need to sign a petition, if you want to pick up these little postcards to help me, I'll be there. You can come see me. Last of all, Carol mentioned the single shot. The single shot is where you get 2 votes for the House. And we're asking you this time just to vote 1 for me. Because we're so outnumbered by the Republicans, we're asking you to vote for me and to basically throw your other vote away. Don't give it to the Republicans. And that's how I get enough votes to win. So thank you so much. I don't know if I left any time for questions, but if I didn't, I'll go into the chat and I will answer those for you.
Right on time.
Okay, I don't see any questions for you, okay, but I'll just follow up with so that people understand why we say to throw a vote away. It is the top 2 vote getters that will go on to take the office. Jennifer is the only Democrat. There will be 2 Republicans. We don't know which ones will come through the primary. So there's going to be 3 on the ballot. So if it's the top 2 vote getters and you're looking at giving 2 votes, if you give the other one away to the Republican, you've just canceled your vote for Jennifer. Okay? So that's why we're saying toss the vote. Because again, if you truly want Jennifer back in office, use only 1 vote, push your numbers up, because trust me, the Republicans are going to be voting for both of their candidates. And so we need to make sure it is not split to the top Republican or the top Democrat. It's not how it works, folks. So be educated and educate your friends and family if they're voting in this area as well. So, all right. Well, thanks, Jennifer, and I will see you tomorrow morning. All right. Okay, now we're going to discuss the Senate seat in LD13. And as we have found out, thanks to the impetus from the Republicans, we used to be dying just to have a Democrat step forward to run for an office. We are past that now, folks, so congratulate yourself, because now we do have more than 1 person, and we have 2 good people who are trying to run for the Senate seat, but that's only 1 seat. All right, so you're going to have to make a decision in the primary as to which one of these candidates gets your vote. So tonight we're presenting both of them to you. And again, in no particular order, we're trying to mix it up. The first candidate you're going to hear from is Cindy Hans, who is running for the Senate seat in the primary for the Democratic nomination for LD13. Cindy, it's all yours. And watch Monroe for the timekeeping.
Thank you. I set a timer on my clock too. I'm Cindy Hans. As some of you may not know, that I was raised in a military family. So some of my earliest memories are of Spain. My dad was stationed at Torrejon. Grew up mostly in the Midwest, but have been out in Arizona 29 out of the last 34 years. I raised my children here. I had a career in public education as a teacher, an assistant principal, and a principal. And I can assure you that I am just as passionate and energetic and full of fight for those dollars for education as anybody is. One of the things that happened last week was that those of us who worked to get signatures for Prop 307, that was thrown off the ballot by our Supreme Court. So we now lost that option for funding. It is becoming crucial to vote in public school education candidates. The only thing that's going to make a difference is to change the legislature, because we all sit out in that heat every summer with referendums and we're ignored. It's time for us to shout loudly, to make a difference by representing the voices that sign all those petitions every single year. Gary talked about the surplus. We have a $5.3 billion surplus. Just in case you don't know what that means, 1 million seconds is 12 days, 1 billion seconds is 37 years. We can afford to fund this education. One of the things that I've spoken about before is privacy and healthcare. And of course, I'm the 3rd or 4th or 5th person tonight to tell you how awful this is with this, the Politico breaking the draft of the Supreme Court opinion that we've been expecting sometime the end of June. I personally don't think this is the end. I think that they're going after a lot of things that are your business and your business only, as in who you should marry, who you can marry, why you should marry them, why you should not. In addition to healthcare, it's not stopping at healthcare. It is crucial that we vote for people who respect all human beings of all stripes, of all colors, of all persuasions, of all ages, of all genders. We need that. And those are all values that I adhere to. I would love to have your vote in the primary. Again, my name is Cindy Hans. I will be putting some contact information in the chat, and I am ready for your questions right now.
Great.
I don't see any.
No, I don't either. So if you do have a question for Cindy, please put it in the chat. I know she will be here through the end of the meeting.
Will be.
And we will continue then with our next candidate for the LD13 Senate seat. That's Michael Morris. Michael?
Unmute yourself, please.
You're still on mute.
I hate it when that happens.
All right.
Okay, hi everyone. Most of you already know me. My name is Michael Morris. I'm the other primary candidate for the state Senate position that Cindy is running for as well. I've talked about the issues ad nauseum, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about me tonight, and then I'm going to go into the issues. So I'm a military brat, just like Cindy. My dad retired out here when I was 9, and I've been here ever since. I love Arizona. I raised 4 kids here. I still have my last little one is in high school. She's only got a couple more years left. And I am running because a lot of things are wrong, but I want to make this state better for these kids, for my children, and for the future. So anyways, that's a little bit of background about me. So I haven't really talked about myself too much. So let me get into the issues. Education, humongous. I know we've talked about that a lot tonight. We need to get funds to these kids, the teachers, the programs, the schools, they need money, and we're like 50th in the country. It's just not right. So anyways, and again, I'm not a professional politician. I'm just a regular guy sitting around watching these issues, and I'm like, oh my God, I have to do something. Michael, get up, do something, and I'm at a point in my life where I have more time and I can actually do these things. I'm not raising a lot of kids anymore, and so I have more time, a little more resources. So that's another reason why I'm here. So anyways, education is huge. We need to change the legislature, as was mentioned before, and get a pro-education guy in there or gal, and get some programs to help the kids have the availability. And it's not even so much funding. Yes, it's funding, but it's also a mindset. The students need to understand that there are options for them. You can go to college. You shouldn't be thinking about money. You should be thinking about, do I like this? Do I want to do this? How can I contribute? And not just college, trade programs. When I was in high school, they had like a nursing program that I signed up for, completely free. If you were willing to put in the work, you're an LPN when you get out. You take those state tests and you have a skill, and now you're contributing to the community. You have a better quality of life. These issues are huge. So education, I'm a huge pro-education guy. Protecting our freedom to vote, we've talked about that a lot. The problem with the reason why we don't have a lot of these policies that we're talked about tonight is because the right people aren't being voted in, the right laws aren't being voted for. And right now, there's a ton. I mean, you can ask Jennifer, there's a ton of voter suppression bills in front of the legislature right now. And, historically, when you make it harder to vote, who does it affect? It affects brown people, Democrats, working moms that have to work until 8 o'clock. They can't get to the polls. Well, I just won't vote. And so, they're handpicking the jury to get the result that they want. I feel that voting should be as easy and as convenient as possible, and we should try to engage as many voters as we can, so the true will of the people, could be realized. And these policies that we've all talked about, people want them. There's just not enough people that are voting to get them. And so that's obviously a really huge issue for me. Healthcare reform.
1 minute, please.
Okay, I'll try to speed it up. I was self-employed for many years, and if you have access and you make X amount of dollars, you're covered. You work for a big company, you're covered. But if you're in the middle, you're that $20,000 to $60,000 a year guy that's an electrician or something, you're done. You don't have insurance. I went for 9 years with no insurance for my family now because I couldn't afford it. I left my job and they said, yeah, $1,400 a month. I was making $31,000 a year, you know, so that was just not a thing that we can do. So I'm going to advocate for health insurance. I got to get that done. Mentally ill, the huge issue. We're almost as bad in mental illness funding as we are in education. You can see it, the biggest homeless encampment, one of the biggest ones in the country. Anyways, I guess I'm out of time. A lot of stuff to try to cram in a short amount of time. But go to my website. I'm going to post it. It tells a lot about more detail about what I'm talking about here. If I can get into the Senate, we will have a majority, actually, if Cindy does too. And I will fight to get these things done. I will make a difference. So thanks for listening to me, and I'll post my contact information in the chat.
Okay. Thank you to both of you. And in the chat, and you can individually answer this, okay, but there's a question for both of you as Senate candidates that says, for both Senate candidates, if a state budget deal, you know, because we are dealing with a budget now and it's going to be a trade-off, included 900 million plus for public school funding, but also provided more dollars for vouchers, would you vote for it? So Cindy, Michael, I'll let you put your answer to that question in the chat. I'm afraid we're going to have to move on, but I think it's one that's self-explanatory as to what the question is about and where you would put the dollars. So
my answer is no, but I'll answer in the chat.
Okay. All right. Okay. And Cindy, you can put your answers there as well. So now going on, because as we've mentioned, it's going to be the legislature who provides the funding, but then we go to the individual school districts that do the governing of how that money is spent. And so tonight we have 3 candidates who are running for the Chandler Unified School District. And again, in no particular order were they done. We have the 3, Marilou Estes, Matthew Young, and Crystal Markowsky. So first on the agenda was Marilou Estes. And Marilou, you have 3 minutes to talk. And if we have time for a question, if not, we may put it just in the chat, let you, put your answer in the chat. Okay? And Monroe will be your timekeeper. Marilou, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. I hope everybody can hear me. Okay, good. Yes, thank you, Carol, and thank you, Paula. And thank you, LD13, the former LD17. And as Minnie said earlier, I hope we can get back together soon. Like Carol said, I am running for the Chandler Governing Board. And I will just give you a little bit of my background. My family moved to Arizona, Scottsdale, 60 years ago, and from Indiana. And I have lived, of those 60 years, I've lived 40 of them in Chandler. I have stepchildren who also attended the Chandler schools. Before I became a teacher, I worked in the corporate setting for Motorola many years. And in 1987, I decided that I really didn't want to do this anymore. I was a tech person and I was single, and I decided that I was going to go back to school. I've always wanted to be a teacher. I decided to get my degree in education. So I worked part-time, went to school full-time, and graduated in 3 years from ASU. I was hired right out of college for Chandler and went to work at Galveston Elementary and taught there for 8 years, and then moved on to Bologna and taught there for 2 years. And then after I taught at Bologna, I went and moved to Bash Elementary, and I taught there for 12 years. I retired 10 years ago. Even though I retired, I really didn't leave the classroom. I subbed almost every day. I did a long-term sub at Carlson CTA and subbed at Knox Gifted many times. and did subbed at Hull and all the other Chandler schools. But the last 6 years, I subbed only for Hartford Elementary. I love that school. And anyway, but I haven't subbed in the last 2 years. I was pretty disappointed in the board's decision not to require mask mandates. And I have a 98-year-old mother who is in hospice, and I just didn't want to put her health at any risk by going into the classroom teaching and whatever. So I haven't subbed since then. But I do have a vision for the Chandler, my vision for the Chandler's governing board. And that one thing is, I believe all children have the right to a quality public education. And when I say the operative word is all children, I believe all parents have the right to be a participant in the design of a quality education. And that's meaning, and what I mean by that is no one special interest group should control the narrative of and duly influence any of the board's decisions for their student. Lastly, I believe that partisanship is a very polarizing element in the design of an education. And whether you lean left, right, Republican, Democrat, although I am a Democrat, the governing board is a nonpartisan position, and decisions must be made in the best interest of all the Chandler students. And that's all I have. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marilou. If you if you have any questions for Marilou, please put it in the chat. And now we're going to bring up our next candidate for the school board, and that is Matthew Young. Matthew, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Hey, everybody. Hope you can hear me. I'm Matt Young, and as Carol said, I'm running for the governing board for Chandler Unified School District. As you may know, the CUSD is currently operating under an ambitious plan called Mission 2025. And if you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to go check it out. The mission's pretty simple. It's to empower all students with the knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to excel in college, career, and life. And this sounds simple, but it's an extraordinarily ambitious mission because the CUSD has over 40,000 students in it who all come from different learning styles, families with different backgrounds and values and resources. So achieving this mission requires a governing board that is diverse, forward-thinking, and creative. And we need board members who are results-driven and guided by evidence. Those who have courage to ask difficult questions, not just of parents and teachers and students, but also of themselves. Because at the end of the day, we're all accountable to how we succeed at empowering all students with knowledge, skills, and attitudes necessary to excel in college, career, and life. So this means ensuring that students have access to a contemporary and challenging curriculum. That means providing them with opportunities and experiences that enrich their worldviews. This means providing them with resources to help them deal with the challenging situations that may arise in school. And this means doing this all for students and for all students. We need to remember that among 40,000 students, there are differences in culture, socioeconomic status, and learning abilities. And this means supporting teachers with resources that empower them to do their best for students. And I applaud the discussions here about trying to get resources to students and teachers. But as Carol mentioned, the governing board decides how these resources are implemented. And we need board members with a mind toward utilizing them thoughtfully and creatively, and remembering to ask the question, are we taking everyone into account? And how do these decisions affect our diverse student body? I strongly believe in the implementation of strategies to evaluate the effectiveness of our decisions. If we evaluate the students and we evaluate the teachers, we should be evaluating the decisions we make on how we spend the money. It seems like these decisions often just kind of go off into a vacuum. And when questions come up 2, 3, 4 years later, we have no evidence to say, here's what we did before. It worked great, or it didn't work, and here's how we're going to move forward. So having said all that, I'll close by telling you a little bit about myself. My entire personal and professional life has been one of reconciling a lot of different perspectives and finding answers in difficult places. I come from a diverse household. I'm half Navajo. My dad still lives on the reservation, and half Jewish. I went to Catholic high school despite that. I happened to excel in school, but I grew up with siblings whose academic predispositions span the entire spectrum of abilities. I got my degree in psychology at ASU, but I became a bench neuroscientist, getting my PhD all the way on the other side of the country at the University of Pennsylvania. I moved down to Atlanta, did my postdoctoral fellowship, not just in research, but also in teaching. And during this time, I taught at Spelman College. And for those of you who don't know about Spelman, it's the top historically Black college in the country, also happens to be all female. And so you can imagine teaching as a half Navajo, half white male, teaching at Spelman, the kinds of situations that you find yourself in, as well as the kinds of situations you have to consider when teaching there effectively. So what all these contrasting experiences have engendered in me is a firm belief that a true education is dependent on a diversity of experience and ideas, and that the goal of education is to foster an ability to engage actively and thoughtfully in the human experience, even when those other humans are different from you, which seems to be a problem lately at some of these governing board meetings. So I'll just close by saying, as my son begins kindergarten in July, it's my hope to help foster a CUSD that provides this type of learning environment, one that is safe and challenging and contemporary and for all people. And that's all I got, man.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you very much. All right, and our final speaker tonight is the last candidate that we have for the Chandler Unified School District Governing Board, and that is Crystal Markowsky. Crystal?
Thank you,
And
Carol.
also, Sheldon, hopefully you can let Crystal share the screen for her PowerPoint.
You know what? I decided not to, so I'm just
Oh, okay.
gonna chat. Y'all have to just look at me.
Okay.
Thanks, Carol. Thank you, LD13, for having me here today. My name is Crystal Markowsky, and I'm running to serve as a member on the Chandler Unified School District Governing Board. I'm a mom, a leader, and a public school advocate. I'm running because I want to work to ensure that our public schools remain high quality with a focus on the needs of all of Chandler in every zip code, like Leader Boulding said earlier today. I'm a director of internal audit with global responsibilities in my day job, and I serve as a leader in our Women and Allies Employee Resource Group at my company. During 2020, as COVID began impacting our day-to-day lives, I wondered how our kids and our community would be protected. Short answer, they weren't very well. And I started attending biweekly school board meetings by watching YouTube, submitting comments, questions, and suggestions over email to our board members. As I paid more and more attention, I became more and more aware of the impacts these local decisions have on our kids, teachers, and community. And unfortunately, over the course of those years, the public comments became more and more divisive, dangerously spouting misinformation on topics ranging from curricula to vaccines and budgets. And the board's actions and responses have been less than impressive or effective. I myself am a product of public schools. They saved me. I grew up in public housing and relied on public assistance before graduating from New Mexico State in 1999 and ASU in 2003. I'm so proud of the education my kids are receiving in our school district. 2 of my children attend Tarwater, and I've been involved there as a treasurer of the PTO and a volunteer over our 7 years. As Kelli Butler indicated, I've kind of happened into this too by the luck of being a concerned mom. And these are some of the first LD meetings I've attended. Clearly, though, local engagement is crucial, and I've been an engaged and active parent supporting CUSD since we joined the district 7 years ago. I've connected and engaged with board members about masking, responses to anti-Semitism, board policies, curricula, and anti-trans bills. In those connections, I've indicated that I believe the radical notion that all of our students deserve a high quality education and a safe environment for learning, an environment that's free from racial inequity, free from homophobic slurs and actions, and where girls can feel safe from their fellow students. I believe the radical notion that our students should learn a complete and accurate history and see themselves reflected in their texts. And I believe the radical notion that our teachers are professionals and should be treated and compensated as such. In short, I want to work to ensure that our public schools remain high quality with a focus on the needs of all of Chandler. Strong education system, as we've talked about over and over for each of these candidates, is important to ensure our community remains successful and vibrant. I believe I can bring my business and work experience of listening and making difficult risk-based decisions to the school board. And I commit to ensure that equity and impacts to all our students are at the forefront of my decisions. I will put in the chat the ways you can contact me. I am collecting signatures. I'm out canvassing most weekends, and I thank you for your support and for the time tonight.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Monroe.
Thank you very much. So again, tonight, you've had a chance to hear a lot of the candidates who will be on your ballot in the primary August 2nd. Ballots will go out if you get them by mail 30 days beforehand. And if you go to the polls, that information should be available to you at least 2 to 3 weeks beforehand as to where they're going to be. I wanted to also mention real quickly that we had other candidates on with us tonight. They didn't get a chance to speak, but their races are just as important. So I want to make sure that we give acknowledgement to Javier Ramos, who's running for U.S. Congressional District 5. He is on the meeting tonight. Also, Jennifer Germain, who is currently a House representative from the old LD13, is going to be running for Justice of the Peace in the San Marcos District. We had AJ Curtaloo, who is now in LD12. He ran last time in LD17 for the Senate. He is running now for LD12 House. And we also had Randy Miller attending from the SRP board. So again, a lot of our people are here tonight just to make sure that you know that there's support out there and that we've had successes in getting people in office and that we can do that again this election. So with that, Paula, I'm going to turn it back to you for any final comments. Thank you all.
Sorry, I was muted. Well, that was a lot of good information. I hope that those of you who are new enjoyed it. I know hearing all those speakers is such a treat for me. I really like it. Helps me a lot to hear the differences in strategies and opinions and viewpoints. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll come back. I hope you'll all come back.